We continue our journey in the Psalms with a psalm of immense celebration. It contains a lot of great statements about God and reasons to celebrate and worship Him. But this praise is born out of a hard place. Now, we might want to read the book of Psalms a bit like a kind of buffet, the sad Psalms for when we're feeling down, the happy Psalms for when things are going well. But though helpful at times, picking and choosing what Psalms we engage with according to our mood means we miss out on something important. It is actually important to read and praise Psalms of lament when we are not in a place of lament, because as we saw a couple of weeks ago, they teach us to look to others for whom lament sums up their daily experience. But equally, psalms of praise and celebration, like our psalm today, Psalm 99, are important too. Now, sometimes it might feel like the psalms are a randomly gathered mishmash of Israel's prayers, but actually, they've been collected and ordered and shaped with careful and artful imagination. A couple of weeks ago, when we looked at Psalm 13, and I mentioned that the Psalms take us on a kind of a journey, they open with a call to align ourselves with God, and they end with praise and praise and praise and praise. And they take us on a journey through the ups and downs of life with God. And it mirrors in some way the journey of Israel. Now, you might have noticed that at certain points in the Psalms, 5 in fact, the psalm will end with praise the Lord and then have a heading before the next psalm, book 1, book 2, etc. So the praise the Lord phrase is like a stitch connecting each of the 5 major sections of the Psalter. So book 1 is Psalms 1 to 41. So you'll see that praise the Lord phrase in Psalm 41, and then a book 2 ahead of Psalm 42. Book 2 is Psalms 42 to 72, book 3, 72 to 89, book 4, 90 to 106, and book 5, 107 to 150. Now, when you look at book 3, that's Psalms 72 to 89, it seems to be mirroring Israel's time of distress in exile, the period when Jerusalem had been destroyed and the people of Israel were languishing in captivity in Babylon. There's lots of lament, including the only lament psalm that doesn't end with a resolution of confidence. Psalm 88, verse 18, darkness is my closest friend. Now, the Israelites in exile were living in a time of desolation. To borrow a phrase a lot of us are either using or hearing at the moment, this was their new normal, where they had to get used to being without their land, without their central place of worship, without their homes, without the monarchy, their royal leadership. Their new normal was of loss and disorientation. And they were faced with the question, well, was everything lost? Had God given up on them? Was this the end of God's purposes in the world or with Israel? Had they blown it? Now, as the Psalms move into book 4, Psalms 90 onwards, it is as if the psalmists want to answer that predicament. And in the Psalms in the 90s, the psalmists do something just extraordinary, outrageous. At just a time when Israel is in despair, the royal line of David seems to have failed and been lost, we reach a series of psalms that proclaim something just outrageous in the circumstances. Psalm 93 verse 1, the Lord reigns, he's robed in majesty. The Lord is robed in majesty and armed with strength. Indeed, the world is established, firm and secure. Psalm 95 verse 3, the Lord is the great God, the great King above all gods. Psalm 96 verse 10, say among the nations, the Lord reigns. 97 verse 1, the Lord reigns, let the earth be glad, let the distant shores rejoice. 98 verse 6b, shout for the Lord, shout for joy before the Lord, the King. I mean, you're getting the picture here. And finally, Psalm 99, our psalm, verse 1, the Lord reigns, let the nations tremble. He sits enthroned between the cherubim, let the earth shake. Now, the Lord reigns is an audacious claim for an enslaved and exiled people whose land had lain crushed under the might of a foreign army. And in those days, if a nation's army won against you in battle, that meant their gods were more powerful than your gods, so people thought. But the Psalms don't let us get away with thinking that how things seem is how they are, or how things will be. The Lord reigns. And this God is king idea stretches back way before the time of Israel's monarchy. In a song of celebrating God's rescue of the Israelites from slavery in Egypt, Moses declared in Exodus 15, "The Lord reigns forever and ever." His sister Miriam then sings, "Sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. Both horse and driver he has hurled into the sea." And there seems to be a number of connections between this song of Moses in Exodus 15 and our psalm. And it's possible that these are deliberate and that our psalmist is wanting to remind the worshippers singing and praying Psalm 99 that the Lord being king is not a new idea. It's not an invention that arose with Israel's monarchy, but it stretches far further back than that. So how does our psalm describe or indeed celebrate God's kingship, God's reign? We see in verses 1 to 3, his reign is not the reign of a localized God who was only in control in his day, in his region. His reign is global and in scope and in consequence. The language of sitting enthroned between cherubim and Zion press home that the Lord has a home in Israel, while exercising his immense power over all the nations. And the Israelites dare to claim that this is true, even now, even while they are in Babylon. In verse 3, we have a call to praise. Let them praise your great and awesome name. There's a similar call in verses 5 and 9, you'll have noticed. All three of these calls to worship also make the same point. He is holy. Now, Clinton McCann defines holiness in our psalm as describing the awesome presence of God that evoked fear and required human beings to keep their distance or to approach God only after making special preparations or taking special precautions. Now, no wonder his rule might make the nations tremble and shake, verse 1. But far from driving a wedge between God and his people and keeping them at a distance, in our psalm, this holy and awesome God relates. He gets involved in human affairs. So verse 4, he loves justice and establishes equity. He commits to what is just and right. He answers the prayers of his people, verse 7 to 8. He forgives and calls to account in verse 8. So it seems like a commitment to holiness is closely connected to a commitment to justice and equity. Now, living in lockdown has in some ways equalized many things in society. We're all in it together kind of thing. But actually, that's not entirely true, is it? Hasn't it also exposed and intensified some of the injustices and inequalities amongst us? I'm not just talking about our living arrangements and garden and things like that. This week's seen a lot of debate around schools when they're going to open again, and the so-called digital divide. Now, there are a mountain of resources, amazing resources being made available for school kids to carry on their education. And if you're homeschooling, I'm sure you've seen those. But imagine doing homeschooling without a computer or without the internet. Now, you can talk with Garas, Gloucestershire Action for Refugees and Asylum Seekers, and they can tell you about the impact it has on young people when they don't have regular access to the internet. They don't have a laptop. How are they supposed to do their college work or their schoolwork? Well, God's holiness and involvement in human affairs is closely related to our psalm, and that example was just one. Now, traditionally, Psalm 99 is read on Transfiguration Sunday in the church calendar, which does seem appropriate. There, for example, in Luke 9, we read about the Transfiguration. Jesus is seen in his glorious splendor, and his disciples are terrified. But immediately after this amazing, immense display of Jesus' splendor, he then talks to them about how he is going to Jerusalem to suffer, to die, and to be raised to life. And in Psalm 99, and in the gospel accounts of the life, death, resurrection, and ascension of Jesus, we see a mystery played out of God's sovereignty and his holiness meeting the frailty and need of our broken humanity. He is a God who hears, who answers, who gets involved in matters of justice and inequality, who forgives and also holds to account. So how does this psalm, a psalm of celebration, help Israel navigate their new normal, the new normal of exile? How might it help us to navigate together as a community of faith in times of uncertainty and distress? Well, in a chapter on the Psalms, biblical scholar Ellen Davis, who I mentioned before, talks about poetry serving, she says, as emergency response language, whereby people cope responsibly and creatively with crisis, especially when that crisis proves to be prolonged. And she later points out that psalms of celebration have been prayed by generations of believers as a kind of resistance whose circumstances screamed the opposite. The Psalms are very good at stubbornly insisting that how things seem are not how things are, or they're not how things will be. They call us not to buy into despair, but to commit to God, just as he commits to us, even in our confusion and questions. Now, perhaps we can respond to Psalm 99 by returning to a place of awe and worship before the Lord. Perhaps we need to be reminded of his love for justice, for equity, for rightness in the world. Perhaps we need to be reminded that God hears and answers, forgives and calls to account. And finally, perhaps we just need to pray this psalm together because it is there to be prayed. Perhaps we just need to join countless generations before us who have prayed it and been reminded that there will come a time when they are praying, when what they are praying reflects what they see.